You could pay off this house tomorrow. The whole thing. The mortgage they've been carrying for 29 years, the second one they took out when the roof went, all of it. You've done the math. It's a Tuesday afternoon for you. So explain this. Explain why you've been sitting in your father's driveway for 11 minutes with the engine running and you can't make yourself open the door. You reach for the handle. You stop. Your hand stays on it and you don't move. The porch light is on. It's 4 in the afternoon and it's on, which means your mother turned it on this morning when you said you were coming and forgot about it. That's a thing she does. She has always done it. There's a bag of soil against the step that's been there long enough to split at the seam. You cut the engine. You put one foot down on the driveway and sit there, half in, half out of a car, worth more than your father made in his best 4 years. Stuck on a question you drove 2 hours to answer and can't. If you walk in there tonight, are you still his son, or are you the man who sends money? You pull your foot back in. You close the door. Maybe you don't have this money yet. You will. And when you do, this driveway is waiting for you too. It started 12 years ago in a different parking lot with a number. The number, you're 22, and you read it standing up in the stairwell because you couldn't open it at your desk. $61,000. They hired you 8 months ago at 42. 8 months. You read the line 4 times. Then you go back out through the floor and past the kitchen where somebody's microwaving fish, and you say something normal to somebody and you have no memory afterward of what it was. You take the elevator down with 2 people from a company on the 4th floor who are arguing about parking. Outside it's bright and it's 4:30 and you start walking to your car and you don't get there. You stop in the middle of the lot between a van and a hedge and stand still with your phone in your hand because you've started doing the math you swore you would never do. Your father has been at the same plant for 26 years. You know what he makes because you found a pay stub on the kitchen counter when you were 16, half under his keys, and you weren't supposed to look at it, and you stood there and looked at it anyway, and then you moved the keys back exactly the way they were. $54,000. You are 22 years old, and you just walked past a man it took 26 years to get there, and you did it in 8 months, and you didn't earn it, and you can't give it back. You start walking again. You get to your car, and you don't get in. You put your hand on the roof and stand there with the metal hot under your palm. You don't feel proud. That's what confuses you. What comes up is closer to sickness, because the number isn't proof that you're good. The number is proof the game was rigged, and he was standing in it the whole time, and nobody ever told him. You call your mother from the parking lot, on your feet, walking a slow line up and down the row, because you can't stand still while it rings. She screams. You hear the phone leave her ear, and her voice go thin and far away as she yells it into the next room. And then you hear him say, "Is that right?" in the flat voice he uses when he's trying not to sound like he cares. She asks how much. You say it's good. You say it's really good. You change the subject and she lets you. You hang up. You get in the car. And now you sit, keys in your hand, engine off, phone dark in your lap, for 11 minutes in a parking lot at 22. That was the first lie. You won't recognize it as one for another 2 years. The dinner, you're 24, February. You come up the walk with a bag over your shoulder, and you stop halfway, because the snow's been cleared in a single-file path, 1 shovel wide, and it doesn't reach the mailbox. You notice that. Noticing it is new. The house smells the way it has always smelled. Laundry, detergent, and onions. You carry your bag up, and the 3rd stair makes the sound it has always made. Your old room has the same blanket on the bed and a laundry basket on the dresser that isn't yours. Coming back down the hall, you look at the carpet. There's a track worn through the middle of it, gray, thread showing. It was worn through when you were 15. It's still worn through. You stand there longer than you should. Then somebody calls you, and you go eat. At dinner, your father asks what you actually do all day. He's not being sharp about it. He genuinely wants to know. He puts his fork down to listen, which he only does when he means it. You get about 11 seconds in before you hear the words coming out of your own mouth. Stakeholders, pipeline, Q3, words that don't exist in this kitchen. Words this kitchen has never once needed. He nods. He says, huh. He picks the fork back up. Your mother fills the gap the way she has filled every gap in this house for 30 years and asks if you're eating, and the conversation moves, and you let it move. Later, everyone's gone up. You come down for water, and he's at the sink with the overhead off and the little light above the stove on, rinsing the last plate. He doesn't turn around. He asks it sideways, the way he asks everything that matters. They treating you all right over there? You say yeah. You get a glass out of the cupboard. You fill it and you don't drink it. He says good, good. And then there's a pause, and you don't know why you do it. You will wonder about it for years, but you say the number. 88,000. The water is still running. He doesn't turn it off right away. 2 seconds, maybe 3, where the tap and the refrigerator are the only things in the room. Then he shuts the water off, dries his hands on the towel hanging off the oven handle, turns around and says, "Hey, that's real good." And he means it. He's not a small man about it, and he never will be. He crosses the kitchen and puts his hand on your shoulder and squeezes, hard, twice, the way he's done since you were 9. Then he takes his hand back. He doesn't ask you anything else. Not that night, not the next morning. He never asks about your work again, not once. And 6 years from now, when the call comes at a bad hour, that silence is the thing that will make it unbearable. You watch him reach up and turn off the light above the stove, and the kitchen goes dark, and he says goodnight from the doorway. What they stopped telling you. You're 27, and the calls have gotten shorter. You notice it as a scheduling thing first. You're busy. They know you're busy. Everybody agrees out loud that you're busy, and that agreement turns into a wall that all 3 of you help build, and nobody ever admits to building. But it isn't the busy. The busy is just the word you use, because the real thing doesn't have one. You find the real thing in the basement in April. You're down there looking for a box of your old textbooks, moving things off a shelf, and you turn around and stop because the water heater is new. White, clean, a manufacturer's sticker still on the side of it, and a sheet of paper folded on top in a plumber's handwriting. The old one had a rust stain down the front that you could have drawn from memory. You put your hand flat on it. You do the arithmetic. A unit and the labor. $12, maybe $1,400. Nobody called you. You go up the basement stairs 2 at a time. Your mother's at the counter wiping something that's already clean, and you ask when the water heater went, and she doesn't stop wiping. February, she says. It got handled. You ask how it got handled. She changes the subject with the smoothness of a woman who has been changing subjects her whole adult life, and you hear yourself let her do it, and that's the moment. Right there. You could have pushed and you didn't, and part of you is relieved, and you'll think about that later too. They didn't hide it because they were ashamed of being broke. They hid it because somewhere in the last 5 years, the direction of help reversed in this family, and neither of them knows how to stand in that. He spent 30 years being the man who fixes the thing. You cannot ask him to hand that over on a Tuesday afternoon on the phone, so you stop asking, and they stop offering, and the calls turn into weather and health, and your cousin got engaged, and every one of them ends with him saying, "All right then," which is the sound of a man already reaching for the button. That fall, you get a promotion, title change, big one. The kind you would have called them about at 22 from a parking lot. You come home with it. You put your keys down. You take your coat off. You pick up your phone. Their name is right there, second from the top. Your thumb sits on it and doesn't press. You stand there long enough that the screen goes dark, and you wake it up and it goes dark again. You text a friend instead. He sends back 4 exclamation points. You put the phone face down on the counter and walk out of the room, and then you come back for no reason, and you stand in a very clean apartment with your hands on the edge of the sink and feel absolutely nothing. That's the year the money stops being about the money. That's the year you understand that what you actually bought, without ever meaning to buy it, was a room your parents can't get into, and you've got 3 years before somebody knocks on that door. The ask you're 30 when the call comes at a bad hour. It's your mother. She says your name, and it goes up at the end, like a question, and she has never once in your life said your name that way. You start walking, kitchen, hallway, back again. You do this when something's wrong. You've always done it. His hours got cut, not fired. They were careful about that. They kept the title and took the overtime, which is the polite way a company tells a 58-year-old man that his body has become a line line item. It's been 3 months. They've been covering it with the card. She tells you the number they're behind, $4,100. You stop walking. You put your hand flat on the counter and lower yourself onto a stool like you've been on your feet all day. You have that in checking, not savings, checking. And your brain does the arithmetic before you can stop it, and it comes out to about 11 days of your life. 11 days of your life is 30 years of his pride. You say, send me the account information. She starts to say something about paying it back, a schedule. She's already worked out a schedule, and you say mom and nothing else. She stops. You hear her breathe, then you hear her crying, and it isn't the crying of someone who just got bad news. It's the crying of someone who has been holding it since February and finally got permission to put it down. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment. You expect to feel like a son. You expect to feel useful. What comes instead is grief, because in the 4 seconds it took to say, send me the account information, something ended for good. The direction of this family reversed, and it is never reversing back. You are not the child. You will never be the child again. There is no version of the rest of your life where that man calls you up and asks what you think about a used truck. You send it at 11:40 that night from the couch with the TV muted and throwing light on the wall. You type the number in. You check it twice, the way he taught you to check things twice. You press send. Then you put the phone face down on the cushion beside you and you don't move for a long time. He doesn't call to say thank you. He can't. Your mother says it for him twice and you let her. Neither of you ever mentions it again. Not once. Not in 4 years. What he said in the kitchen. You're 32. Christmas. Everyone's gone up, and it's you and him and the overhead off and the stove light on, which is apparently where this family does all of its talking. He gets up and pours what's left in the pot into a mug and puts it in the microwave, which is a thing he does at 11 at night that no doctor would sign off on, and nobody in this house has ever successfully argued him out of. The microwave runs. He watches it instead of you. He takes it out and he doesn't sit back down. He stands at the window over the sink, looking out at a yard with nothing in it, one hand on the counter. He says, out of nowhere, that he was going to open a shop. 1989. He had a partner lined up and $3,000 saved and a lease he'd walked through twice. Then your mother was pregnant and the insurance at the plant was good. He says it the way you'd mention weather from a year that's already over. There's no self-pity anywhere in it. He isn't asking you to feel anything. He's just telling you a fact about a man you thought you knew. He drinks. He doesn't turn around. Then he says it to the window. I'm glad you didn't have to be careful. And you sit there in your father's kitchen at 32 years old with a mug in front of you that you haven't touched, and you finally understand what you have been carrying since that parking lot 10 years ago. He didn't lose to you. He paid for you. Every hour of overtime. Every year at the same place. Every single time he didn't take the risk. That wasn't a man failing to become something. That was a man deciding on purpose in 1989 that the risk would land on somebody who could survive it. He built you with the hours he didn't spend on himself. You didn't out-earn your father. You spent him. If you've never said that out loud to anybody, you're not the only one. Almost nobody watching this has either. You don't say anything. You can't. He finishes it standing up, rinses the mug, and leaves it upside down on the towel by the sink, instead of putting it in the dishwasher, because he always does that and she always moves it in the morning, and he reaches up and turns off the stove light on his way out. The driveway, which brings you back here. 34 years old, sitting in a car in your father's driveway with the engine off and your hand on the door and a porch light that's been burning since 9 this morning for no reason at all. You've been afraid of this for 11 minutes. You've been afraid of it for 4 years, honestly. Afraid that you walk in there and you're not the son anymore, you're the arrangement, that he'll be careful with you, that there's a version of him that stopped being your father the night you sent $4,100 from a couch in the dark. You open the door, you get out, you leave the keys in your pocket, and you don't lock the car because nobody locks anything on this street. You go up the walk, past the split bag of soil. Your foot hits the step, and the door opens before you knock. He's standing there in the same fleece he's had since you were in high school, one hand still on the doorknob, and he looks at you for a second, and then his whole face opens up. There he is, he says. He doesn't ask about work. He doesn't ask about money. It doesn't occur to him. He steps back and pulls the door wide and says, "Your mother's been cooking since noon, and it's too much food. It's way too much food." She doesn't listen. You come in. The third stair makes the sound. The drawer by the sink still sticks, and she still hits it with her hip to close it. There's a game show on too loud in the next room, and the carpet in the hallway is still worn through. He puts his hand on your shoulder in the doorway, squeezes, hard, twice. Then he takes his hand back and goes to tell her you're here. You stay longer than you meant to. You eat too much because she watches you eat. She asks if you're sleeping. He tells a story about a guy at the plant you've never heard of, and you laugh in the right places. Around 10, you stand to go, and he walks you out, no jacket, arms crossed against the cold, and stands in the driveway while you get in. He knocks twice on the roof with his knuckle. He's done that since you were 17. It means drive safe. He's never once said the words. You back out. He's still standing there. He doesn't go in until you're at the end of the street. You can see him in the mirror, hands in his pockets, waiting on a man who has more money than he'll ever have, and no idea how to say a single true thing to him. Here's what it cost. Money isn't a ladder. Money is a translator that stops working halfway through the sentence. It carries you out of the house you were raised in, and then it shuts the door behind you, gently, so gently you don't hear it, and hands you the keys to a room where nobody knows your childhood nicknames. You didn't beat them. You were the plan. You were the thing they built with the years they didn't spend on themselves. And the only way they ever get to see it work is from across a driveway, in the cold, with no jacket on, waving at tail lights. Somewhere tonight, there's a 22-year-old standing between a van and a hedge in a parking lot with an offer letter open on his phone, doing the math he swore he'd never do. He thinks he just won something. He's got about 12 years before he finds out what he actually bought. If you're that 22-year-old, put the number in the comments. Not to brag, just so somebody knows.